Coming to you from just outside of Area 51. What's happening, YouTube? My name's Immortal Coil, and today we are talking Close Encounters of the Phantom kind. With me today is my special guest, Flipp Doubt. How you doing, Flipp Doubt?
Hey, Immortal. I'm good, man. How are you?
Pretty good, man. As we know, the show is slightly interesting for reasons that will be revealed. I also want to mention that the show is probably not intended for sensitive viewers. And by sensitive viewers, I mean kids under the age of 18 and people who are apt to complain about things because it disavows their personal perception about life. So viewer discretion is advised.
Agreed.
Okay. So I assume you are a fan of nerdiness. Am I correct, Flipp Doubt?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely
Yeah.
geek of all things almost.
Now, before I even get started, I want to ask you about your avatar. How did you come up with that?
Well, it went through many iterations. I started out with a drawing and what I wanted it to look like. I just kind of was penciling one day, and I didn't really have the software to. I didn't have any sort of Corel Draw or anything like that. And I ended up coming across an app that my son told me about, and I started messing with it there. And then I thought, well, I need something that looks a certain way. And I found Alienware had a really good alien, but I didn't want to use their logo. So I found the strangest one that was as close to that as possible. And that's where I started. And over the last year or so, it's just changed as I tinkered with it. So it's all original at this point.
Well, I have to say, I find your channel very interesting. You seem to have like a sort of like skit kind of parody element to your presentation to YouTube.
Yeah, man. I like to be original. There's just any number of people doing the same thing, and it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And I didn't really want to risk it either way because I just honestly want to have fun. It'd be great to make some money. I think we all feel that way, but if it's not fun, I think it really shows. And so I have fun with it, pretty much.
Well, and I think that's an important word, fun. It seems like a lot of these channels have gotten into personality drama and, attacking identity instead of talking about entertainment or things that matter. What's your take on that, sir?
I think you're right. But it's like what happened with Gamergate, then Comicsgate. People started realizing that the drama equaled good ratings, for lack of a better term, here on YouTube, subs, views. And so there's a certain personality that's drawn to that sort of thing, and I think that I get it. I've on occasion, hey, put that thing up. You remember when this happened, or how about this? But hey, I didn't get any better views or anything for it, and I certainly didn't enjoy it after the fact. I was like, well, I can't really rewatch that after a couple weeks because it's kind of old news. But for me, I think do what makes you happy, and if it is that sort of thing, that's great. But if it's not, you need to look a little deeper to find your originality.
I agree, sir. And I also want to give you props for being one of the main fandom collective people, especially for people like me who are way under 1,000 subs. Guys like you who are willing to reach out and say, hey, check out this guy. That's very vital. And it's very unselfish too, in a landscape where everybody's just like, my face is my logo and my, identity. Yeah. How'd you start the Phantom Collective, man?
I think the same way any good thing starts, you start it with the best of intentions. You meet the right people, and you have ideas, and you really grow them instead of sometimes you can be disagreeable. I mean, not you specifically, but in as an individual, you could be disagreeable. You have to start with an open mind. And I found people that I could share thoughts and, ideas with, and we just hit it off.
That's really cool. So, everybody, check out Flipp Doubt. Check out the Fandom Collective. He's working tirelessly to push up new talent.
Well said.
So, I also noticed that you're not into, let's say, mainstream topics. It seems like you're into the esoteric and into the unexplained and the unobserved.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons you and I met and got along so well. Beyond just happening to run across each other, I believe people with similar mindsets could probably spot each other from across the room. And I mean that in a very non-gay way. I mean, you just see people who are observers, I guess.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those sort of thought tendrils that connect everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the question? I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. So what I'm trying to get into is the people who might be listening right now are probably going to be taken on a ride because of some of the commonalities we've had. So I'm going to bring up a couple of pieces of cinema. I want to know your thoughts and feelings about them, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So, can you recall the first time that you saw a movie that had extraterrestrials in it that were treated like people instead of something scary?
You know, my mind it wants to pick something out other than Star Wars, but
Star Wars is a great example. Star Trek is a great example.
I think that's what it was. I was before I saw it on the big screen though. I was seeing these weird alien creatures in kids' hands on the playground. I was like 4 years old. I was like, "What is that?" You know, and everyone had it, and it was like finding gold. A friend who had one who'd let you play with it. Like, oh, you've got the Jawa. Oh, you've got Vader. Oh my God, you have Vader. I think that's the first time I experienced that. I was like, "What's a Vader?" And then when I saw the movie, that'd be the first time. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. You?
Well, let me first say hail the rookie cleric, hail Theon Reacts, and hail Warden's Rise Gaming. We got some decent people chiming in on this stream. So and that's what's funny. So I think back, and most of the depictions of alien races in film have been like as a antagonist, like they were invaders, or they were taking over bodies, or they were like consuming people. But the first time I remember them being treated like people were probably in those shows that we were speaking of. Star Trek was very important to me in that regard, because here we are, we overcame our prejudices and our tendency to destroy each other. And then we invented warp drive and reached out to the stars, you know. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like this fear of the unknown that's driven creative talent, and I'm saying that in air quotes, to depict ETs as invaders. Nor am I all love and light, because I realize that there's probably threats out there that's more wild than we've ever imagined.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I really, I'm a Star Trek fan as well, but not everything. I'm picky like anybody. But if it couldn't be Star Wars, if I couldn't have picked that, that's what I would have picked as my first option. And I I always wished that I would be alive to see something like Star Trek, because it seems more closer to reality, because it's not sci fantasy so much as a possible future that they're presenting to us.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not being all hippie like you were saying. You're not all like lovey dovey about it, but like it's it's very interesting to think that we could meet another human race, another some sort of another race.
Sentient, intelligent race.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so I want to talk about a couple of pieces of entertainment, and with special regard to the Ricky critic, who obviously has not seen many things. Spoilers may follow. So, you know, go ahead and plug your ears up and have your juice and cookie party, if that's what you have to do. Um, I want to talk about a couple movies with you, Flipped Out. Let's talk about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Did you see that when it originally came out, or was it like on videotape, or what was your experience with that?
Oh yeah, I saw it at the drive-in. Um,
Mm.
I was still pretty young, but I remembered bits and pieces of it. I watched it again in my teens, and I've seen it since then. But it's been, I don't know, easily a decade since I've seen it. But I remember most of it.
Well, the main things that were driven in my head, of course, was the song, the wah 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 wah, and it was planted into a subconscious in humans around the world, and it always made me wonder: were these humans contacted beforehand, or was it something that was like sent out etherically?
Yeah, I watched a documentary on it before. I did research on videos. Well, I do research on videos, and this particular video in the past was all about um, just aliens. It was supposed to be funny, but I found some really interesting things along that ride. And I watched a documentary about it. And you know what? It might have been then that I watched. That would have been last year. Um, but
Mm.
but yeah, they talked about the music too. How it could be like a message or something, like implanting something in your mind to think about, or that you might dream about or think about later, or a key so they can come see you. Or I can't recall exactly.
Well, it's interesting to me, like music would be something along wavelengths and mathematical. So it would be something that would be, if you're encountering a completely alien world and you don't necessarily understand their communication style, um, or their physiology, you might even be able to influence them on something that they might not overtly perceive at first. Remember that kid, and he was building like the mashed potato mountain
I remember.
out in Australia. Yeah, and then for me, the most compelling thing was at the end when the scientists or the representatives of Earth are sitting around that mountain and playing that song, and the ship is flying over. And when it lands and opens up, and the people come out, you know, very powerful. Like it really gives you chill bumps,
Well,
goosebumps.
apparently based on factual events that the government of the United States, when they encountered, I don't recall if it was at the Air
Well, I
Force.
heard it was Eisenhower.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What do you know, man?
No, that's all. That's about it. I knew it was. If it was true, if it was based on factual events, it would have had to be 1942. Then, what wouldn't it?
Well, and the big rumor that I heard was that uh, it was is after Roswell, so I want to say it's 52, somewhere in that time frame. But when Steven Spielberg did the movie, and he had a private screening with President Reagan, and Reagan watched it, and at some point he leaned over and goes, "You don't know how close to the truth that this is." And supposedly Spielberg was like, "Okay, thanks, dude."
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Reagan was a real believer.
And that's funny too. Jimmy Carter said he saw UFOs.
It's so
And
they're from
go
both
ahead.
sides of the aisle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this phenomenon has been around with us since we've been a species. People have always seen things in the sky. They've always tried to attribute it to something and describe it in terms that other people can relate to.
Hmm.
But how easy is that? You know.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and change this around. Something like Independence Day, okay, where
Hmm.
you have these evil, malicious, resource absorbing race who just wants to come down and subjugate or destroy in order to what claim our minerals, claim our soil, claim our women. What do you think, man?
It's possible. I mean, it, somebody once said that there are, I think, I can't remember his name, but there are as many stars in the galaxy as there are grains of sand in all the beaches of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Carl
Sagan.
Sagan, that's it. And when
Yeah.
you think about it like that, that's impossible that we're alone. I think probably polling most people that you walk up to on the street, the first answer is going to be "Get away from me, freak." But if you get anybody who's willing to talk to you, I think they're going to say, "Yeah, I expect that there's probably life out there." Now, is it good life or bad life, or maybe a lot like us, a little both? Probably like us, a little both.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, I guess
think
that
about
that begs like personal philosophy. So, do you think things are relative like that, or do you think what you believe and what you fear and what you hope for is attracted to you non-physically somehow?
I believe in nature. Um, I think the best representation, and this might really surprise people, but I think the best representation of God is everything in every atom, in every form, because there's no man who was first, with a big beard and a bolt of lightning in his hand, like Zeus and whoever, one day he loves you, but he's gonna throw you in some deep hell because you looked at a woman the wrong way, coveted thy neighbor's wife. I just don't believe that that exists. I think nature itself is the God that we seek. It is clear to me as my life will one day be yours, and vice versa. And maybe that goes into again personal belief and theory and all that, but philosophy. But I don't think that it leads necessarily to there always being a good or bad. I think that's why I like Star Wars, because it really defines
Mhm.
good and bad, like a cowboy movie. But I just don't think it's that simple. Nothing in nature ever is.
Well, I guess since we're still on this entertainment theory, why do you think the rise of the Sith was allowed by the Force and the destruction of the Jedi in the era of the final, the 12th hour of the Old Republic?
The Old Republic.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Why did democracy die? Flipped out.
Greed,
Yeah. What was the will of the Force there?
cleanse, to cleanse.
Yeah.
I think if something starts to dominate, I mean, yeah, that's basically it has to balance itself. That's basically what George Lucas has always said. And that's why I like the Old Republic stuff, because they really understood Lucas's idea. Whether Lucas would agree with it or not, I don't know. But based on his ideals, works really well.
So now that everybody's kind of eased into this, what are your thoughts on the capabilities of modern humans harnessing skills like telepathy and telekinesis? Is it like a muscle that you have to exercise, or is it something you're born with?
I well, I believe I'm a strong believer in the Anunnaki God principle. Not
Yes.
that they're
And you
God.
should expound upon that for people who have never heard of them.
Uh, there is a really good YouTuber called Woodward TV. He did it so well. He explained 14 tablets in 37 minutes, which is pretty fast for those. But I'll try and make it shorter. Basically, this planet X that everyone's worried about will ultimately come through our solar system, disrupt gravitational boundaries, and mess up the planets, turn them sideways, make the oceans, slosh around and cover our planet, and all that. Switch magnetic poles. This is something that, according to these tablets that were found, that were dated to be over 400,000 years old. If you've heard differently, because I've heard a couple numbers.
I've heard a couple numbers too. I'm very familiar with the Sumerian tablets, but we just need your understanding, sir.
Okay, so basically their world was it was dying because they were losing their atmosphere, and I believe the sun was going to melt them or something along those lines. But they needed to put something in the atmosphere to save it. The ruler at the time decided to blow up the volcanoes and try and get them to spew ash into the sky to block out the sun or something. It's really confusing. I hear different understandings, but they needed something. And they said, well, that didn't work, so they decided to go search for gold. But they were squibbling about it through their democracy. Finally, one guy, he wants to take over from the king so he can have a man-to-man fight, and if he wins, he gets to be king. Well, he does, but he fails, so they exile him off planet. So he takes the ship they give him, and he decides, I'm going to that planet we thought maybe we'd mine. But he had to get through the asteroid belt. Back then, apparently, the asteroid belt was tighter. He used some nuclear weapons to blast holes in to get through the asteroid belt. Anyway, he finally comes upon Earth. He already knew it was there. He already knew how to get there. They'd just never been there. And he finds the element he was looking for on the planet. And it's a smaller planet, and it was called Tiamat at the time. Earth. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. What I heard was Tiamat was the original name of the planet, and that when the years ago, like a long time ago, one of the satellites of Nibiru smashed into Tiamat, flung the particles out, and this is before life was there. Okay, this is like when shit was still chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
Tiamat was cleaved, and we can see that as evidence in the difference between the Pacific Ocean, how it's huge and there's like a big open scar. It's deeper, versus the Atlantic Ocean, which is,
much more shallow. There's no
much more shallow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the asteroid belt was a consequence of that collision, and then like you're saying, the god that I believe you're referencing is Alalu, and he came down, and him and Anu, who was the fucking throne at the time, had to suss it out, like in a very savage way. And it's funny, these are some of the oldest myths that we have access to at this time. I'm not saying they're the ultimate old myths, but that's like the last thing that, because also the flood was a big thing. That was yeah.
That's the weirdest part. All these tablets, these 14 tablets, that were found to be much, 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 much older than our Bible, describe events in our Bible having happened much differently. But the names are very similar. But I would encourage anyone to look up the Anunnaki and find out all you can. It will blow your mind, because these tablets are real. They are real.
They're physical stone things that are thousands of years old.
Like way beyond the pyramids. Like ridiculously make the pyramids look like you went there just yesterday. Like way up.
And it's funny, a lot of these things, they were preserved on cylinder seals. And when I'm talking a cylinder seal, I want you guys to picture like a rolling pin, but small, like maybe like a foot long or shorter. And it's a round thing that has like indentations, like it's carved opposite from how it's rolled out, but you can roll it out on a piece of wet clay, and it says like something very succinct. And most of what it said was everything we learned from on high, which is usually translated to the gods. But if you're listening to this channel, we understand that that means beings from beyond the sphere of Earth.
Yes, from heaven, from those who which came, something like that.
Anunnaki, literally, those who from beyond came to Earth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, so they came to Earth. They found the minerals. He went back and got, tried to get the ruler, hey, to understand him. I think he ended up fighting him again at that point and bit his. You want to say that part? We're not for
no,
kids,
that's fine. So yeah, like his manhood was robbed from him, and this is mirrored in the Osiris and Horus myth.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, he lost his shit, ladies and gentlemen. He could not produce progeny. Let's put it politely.
Right. it was bitten.
But yeah, so it was settled that Anu had dominion upon the planet, so he appointed his oldest children, Enki and Enlil.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly, like his wife and consort, Ninki, and these are like the Earth names for them. This is what they told humans to call them. That's probably not their names, but that's what they're preserved as. So we have lengthy tablets about who they are, where they came from, how the occasion for humans to be necessary arose. Maybe you should speak about that, Flipped Out.
Sure. It's really hard to shorten it. So I'm glad you're talking too, because there's details that you're helping me to you're extrapolating them so I can get on to the next part. But yeah, they needed workers in the mines because all of the other Anunnaki were beginning to fight amongst each other, sort of like the way a what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, that's a funny. So just to add to that, in the beginning, like they needed resources for their planet. Now, call that what you will, or what they needed that for. They actually sent people from their starships and their sphere to work physically on planet Earth, and those people were like, "This is fucked up. This planet is hell. It flips night and day too fast. We're not used to this, and we're deep underground. What the hell? Why can't we have some help? Why can't you do something?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was the idea was genetic engineering.
Yeah, they had decided that they would engineer slaves to help them work in the mines to stop the fighting of the mining factions, and it worked after a long failing period. And the women were willing to even impregnate themselves with the DNA of, I guess you would say, Cro-Magnon man at the time.
Yeah, I've heard Cro-Magnon. I've heard Australopithecine as well. And then this also brings up another movie, just to bridge the gap for people who might think this shit is too far out. But I think more often, this shit is too flipped out. I think more often than not, art imitates reality. So think about the movie Avatar by James Cameron. Okay, now everybody wants to say it's Space Pocahontas, blah, 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 blah. But think about what humans are doing there, and think about the native race, and think about how they're jumping into bodies, and they're, I don't think it's too far of a stretch in the imagination.
Not at all. It's a little bit of the reverse, but it's pretty much the same thing. They're going there to get the unobtainium mineral, and then they're gonna start impregnating each other. So it's pretty much the same thing, I guess. But I wouldn't be surprised if James Cameron stole some of that story from the idea of the Anunnaki. Now that you mention it, I hadn't thought about that.
or might he have been directed to do so? Because we all know the upper echelons of pretty much everything are informed about topics.
Yeah. It seems like the top 1%, and now I'm not making this political, I mean the most rich people
Mhm.
on earth would know whatever they need to know to keep the earth in all its people in whatever condition they deem necessary. And if we did start out as slaves, um, that too became a problem. But ultimately, what led to our well, as I'm skipping some cool stuff. So I don't remember whose kids got mad at who or what, but two of them were Cain, or they were pronounced Cain,
Cayenne, yeah,
and Abel.
yep,
That's the Cain and Abel story.
yeah. Which again is prior to the Pentateuch. Um, now I don't want to disavow anybody's religious beliefs. All I'm saying is, if you believe something, look into the history of your belief. You might discover older knowledge than you have been originally presented with. Um, I know that's particularly true in my case, man. I feel like I was born with a certain knowledge on my soul, and I used the combined knowledge of humans up to that point to um, compare what I knew with what I was encountered with, and mm, it's a hard world to live on, huh?
It is because they want to keep everything secret from the masses.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to keep it secret. You're just here because you showed up, and you're gonna go away just as easily. And good luck with that. But there's so
Yeah.
much to learn, and our thirst for knowledge as humans is it is just tenacious. We're gonna get what we want if we need it that bad. Just
Mm-hmm.
the way you want to go out and get a job so you have the money to feed your family. Your brain works in much the same way with knowledge. And it's so funny to me that people are so easily swayed to just say, "Oh, that's nothing. That couldn't possibly have anything to do with what we've been taught." Because what we've been taught, they told us while we were growing up. They swore to the same God that they were teaching us about that it was true. And then, boom, where did these tablets come from that were so much older than the Bible, so much older than the stories of the Bible? Yet they say the same things, only slight changes. Now, which one would you say is true? The older one that has the same stories but is slightly different, or the newer one? I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Well, it's funny to me how let's say modern spirituality, and I don't even want to call it spirituality, modern dogma cherry picks through the texts in order to emphasize their own ego, right? There's wild stories that are crazier than anything you've seen on Unsolved Mysteries that exists inside the sacred texts. Like in the Bible, they talk about a pillar of smoke that led motherfuckers to their desert. In the Vedas, they talk about how to build a flying craft. And here we are talking about cults of personality.
And they found in Egypt, they found this bird creation. It was like carved out of wood that they even made a copy of it, through a 3D printer and
Mm-hmm.
it like a paper airplane, and the damn thing flew.
Hmm.
So at some point, we lost a lot of technology somewhere down the line.
Yeah. And that's a common reporting from around the world, is that there was a level of on high technology that existed upon planet Earth, and even evidence of the destruction of that high society, like the obsidian glass in the Sinai Peninsula, which is radioactive, by the way.
Mm. They
Yeah.
say it was from something melting the sand.
Something. I mean, what's hot enough to melt the sand and leave radioactive elements flipped out?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
They couldn't. They could barely have fire. I mean,
according to conventional science,
yeah,
right?
well
Like
put.
we should have been like bonking ourselves in the head with rocks. Yeah.
Yeah,
We're wearing pelts. We're knocking the females of our choice over the head with a Captain Caveman club, you know.
Captain Caveman. Love
Yeah.
that.
Well, and here might be an unpopular theory. I want to know your thought, but perhaps the retreat from the cities because of their destruction and the coincidence of caveman lifestyle might have had a common uh, impact, you know.
Are you referring to the cities that turned people to stone?
Yeah,
Or
let's talk about that. The destruction of Ur and the pillar of salt,
yeah,
and pointing this all together. So my hypothesis here, just to lay it out unequivocally, and you can comment on this, is that humanity, from all accounts of the sacred texts, was a created race. We were put into a situation where we were stewards to the gods.
mm,
And the gods couldn't get along. We were used as pawns in war and sex and love and deception and all this kind of shit. And they decided to go nuclear against each other. And the fucking old cities were not livable anymore. So we had to disperse. And instead of walking up from slime, from fish, and from monkeys to become humans, we were already humans to begin with, but we had to retreat from our urban centers and live in the caves with the fucking animals because we couldn't be where we were or else we would die. Mohenjo Daro, that kind of shit.
yep, they were done with the humans at one point, completely done with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, you're right. They nuked. That's the theory that they nuked Ur.
Mm-hmm.
And
The Lamentation of Ur, that's another stone text that's written down in fucking rock, thousands of years old. Um, Carry this for about 5 minutes, man. I'll be right back.
okay, so as far as the Anunnaki go, Anunnaki. What's really cool about this story is if you listen to someone present it much better than I am here, but what happens is you learn of a kind of a story that has a little bit of the stories from the Bible in it, but also this very science fiction sort of feel. They had the ability to manipulate, DNA. They had starships, nuclear weapons, and it's put to you in such a way through these stone tablets, through the way that they translate them, I guess. And you understand it is being told to us from someone who cared about these leftover beings. It all leads up to Noah, which he had another name, and was it Enki, which is one of the guys that basically was in charge of Eden. He came down and said, the rest of the Anunnaki want to go ahead and destroy Earth. Uh, and so that's where the floods came from. He gave him information on how to save his family.
Right. So you're talking about the Gilgamesh Epic, or are you talking about Atrahasis?
I moved over to Noah.
Oh, Noah. Okay. So those were two prior names. Noah was the name that got recorded down in the Pentateuch, right, which became the first five texts of the Bible, but which had predecessors. Do you like Star Trek: The Next Generation? Flipped Out.
That's so funny you would ask. I've been watching it. I'm on episode 3. I'm watching it all the way through.
Okay. Have you seen Darmok yet?
I mean, I've seen the entire series back in the 90s, but I haven't seen it in forever, so I'm not there yet.
That's okay. Well, Darmok Picard ends up giving an abridged version of the uh, Sumerian flood story featuring Gilgamesh.
Wow, I can't.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. He doesn't like, excuse me, he doesn't go into everything like we're going into, but it's enough that if you're a Star Trek fan and you like that story, you might care to go to the library or to the internet and do some research. Um, Very cool
It's
stuff.
good stuff.
Very cool stuff.
What really gets me is how close it is to. It comes off real. Like, why were these tablets created so long ago when we're told humans couldn't possibly have existed? And that's
Well,
what really
and
gets you.
again, the existence of oo parts. Have you ever heard of those?
Of what?
Oo parts. So it's out of time, there's like spheres that were machined that are 4 billion years old and have no fucking reason to be here. There's the thing called the Antikythera mechanism that
And
resembles
yeah,
clockwork. Yeah,
that's
that
weird.
probably predates the destruction of the library at Alexandria in
Yeah,
Egypt. You know, just shit like that, like things that due to our own um, prejudices we've destroyed.
I
And
just dream,
yeah,
and I know you're the only one who would get this, but I just dream of knowing what was in the library at Alexandria. We
oh jeez.
I totally missed my calling. I should have went into some history studies because that would have been. I mean, I know
Well, and
that
it's also one of those things. Do you believe in reincarnation? Flipped out.
I believe it. I believe that your atoms are broken back down into their very basics from a scientific point of view. I get it. I understand how you would just like protons across or electrons across the universe would have to react to each other in faster than light speed. It's instantaneous, no matter how far apart they are away. And I believe in alternate universes. I don't
Mm.
know. It's a
What
strange.
about when you die, you lose like 4 pounds, just pow. What do you think those 4 pounds are?
I've heard that it's your soul.
I've heard that too. Do you believe in the soul? Flipped out?
Oh yeah, I do. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so geez, this discussion is moving so fast. I want to bring up another movie so that we can kind of steer this towards where we're going. Um, let's talk about Communion. Now, first it was a book, but then it was a movie. Did you read the book first, or did you see the movie first?
Communion?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
So this is a movie starring cowbell guy. Why can't I think? Christopher Walken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this is probably the first depiction, popular depiction of the race that we know as the Greys or the Zeta Reticuli. If you know, so we've gotten watered down versions of them, but this is kind of going from like they're trying to bridge the gap from like I'm a normal dude. I'm going to the grocery store. I'm taking a piss. I have kids. I have a wife. To I go to a little cabin in the fucking Colorado wilderness, and guess what? Uh, I'm having some stretched out dream time high kind of feeling weird zone, and these little guys come around with bulbous heads and bug eyes. And the cover, I'm going to see if I can find a cover of that for you guys, but this is one of the things that put this type of alien into our popular consciousness.
Communion? I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, Communion. Images. Eli Schreiber. Whitney Schreiber. Sorry, excuse me.
I think that we haven't even gotten into species either, so we should probably do that on another one. Or
Well, I'm trying to build the bridge there.
oh
So
yeah, no, I just am enjoying this, and I'm watching the clock. Like, oh, we got to get to that.
yeah, that's why I'm trying to you know,
No, don't rush. I'm just saying we can always do another one.
yeah. Remember.
So
Where the
Christopher
fuck's
Walken
Tiamat?
talking to aliens. I gotta see that.
Well, yeah. So he's playing the guy. Are you on a PC? Flipped out.
I'm on a MacBook. Yeah.
You're on a MacBook. So if you can pull up something, and I don't know if in StreamYard you have screen share as an option,
I
and if you don't, that's okay.
haven't
Then
done it before, so I'd probably better not.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, since I can't work this at this time, I'm gonna have to ask my geek friends who are way better at this than me now. Look up Whitney Strieber and look up Communion and look up the visual, because this is one of the first times that the face of the gray was put into public consciousness. And this face isn't even imperfect.
Well, I have
Okay.
my phone with me. I'm on Google now.
Okay. So look it up, and we can trust that the audience is going to look into this because they're curious motherfuckers just like we are.
Hmm.
Communion, and it's Streiber. Okay, and you'll know it because the dudes are yellow for some reason.
Okay, communion, and what was the next word? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Whitley Strieber. So
The-
Streiber.
It auto typed it.
Yeah, there you go. So you should see a yellow face that looks familiar.
Oh yeah. I've seen
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So it's one of those things like everybody knows who those guys are, but they changed it a little bit to I don't know. I think Whitley Strieber wanted to know, he wanted to put out his experience, but be able to be contacted by people who are like, yeah, that's pretty much how it looks, but it's a little bit different.
This may be a little late, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
You're in Groom Lake. You're at Groom Lake, Nevada.
Yes. At the present. Like I actually and this is funny, so for people who aren't running YouTube channels, like you have to plan these things out like a week or two in advance. And me and Flipp Doubt had talked offline about some of our ideas about how the show should go. And I was like, just as it fucking happens to be, I'm out in Las Vegas. I'm out just right outside of Groom Lake,
Has
Area 51.
you got
Right?
family?
Say that again.
Family out that way?
My girlfriend does. Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, we're out here doing casinos and dumb shit, but like this entire time, this is the fucking thing I look forward to. Talking to you about this stuff.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. I thought
so I'm gonna go ahead and say it, Flipped Out. 48 minutes into this conversation, I've
sure.
had contact. I'm not afraid to say that. And it's hard to find a spot in the fandom menace to speak about such things, but I think this kind of thing is there's a thirst for it and an audience for it. Everybody wants to know that we're not alone. And the best way I can think to talk about it is to compare these Hollywood fucking fantasies with what the fuck actually happened.
Yeah.
Have you ever encountered anything beyond a human experience?
I have had what I believe to be an encounter, and also unexplained events in my life. Yes, absolutely. And I would
Mm.
challenge anyone to think deeply in their minds throughout their life, to think about some strange moments in their life that maybe they couldn't explain. I'm not sure everyone will, but there are many people out there who suppress it as easily as they suppress memories they just don't want to have anymore, of a breakup or something like that. But yeah, absolutely.
What are the reasons that you think somebody would discount their own feeling of having encountered something beyond the normal human realm? Do you think it's embarrassment? Do you think it's conditioning? What's your idea about that?
I think it's a little of both, maybe even more than that. Um, we are conditioned to, well, we have been less lately. I guess the last decade has been more. more and more people have stepped forward saying that they've either seen something in the sky, or I mean, even the government is saying, "Hey, we have video of pill-shaped objects from a Nimitz class dest- uh, uh,
Mhm.
carrier. A destroyer group saw these things." So I mean, it's funny how when that happened, a lot more people stepped up and all that as well. But I think it is and has been discouragement, but I also think that it has been encouraged uh, in such a poor way back in the 40s, and maybe even after that, because people, oh well, they'd say, I've had an event in my life, and then these men show up from the government and shut them up, tell them not to talk, and threaten them. And this is documented. Whether they're alien dudes or whatever, I don't care. Somebody came up and threatened them. It's happened in Istanbul. It's happened in Great Britain. It happens here, and it still happens. People are threatened, and yet it does carry a stigma that if you have seen or had some sort of event in your life like that, then you're just crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. So you've got one group who encourages it and another group that discourages it. But the discouraging group has been very threatening to a lot of people, and not just in a deadly way, but in a this is your career or this is your respect in society sort of way.
Do you have any ideas about why they choose to come at night? All my encounters have been during the cover of darkness.
Um, it's probably easier if you were going to humans are absolutely vicious fighters,
Aren't we?
and so if you were going to try and trap a tiger, we would probably do it during the day, I guess, because we could see the damn thing. But I suppose it depends on what you're dealing with. If you could catch it when it's at rest, you can hit it with a dart at night while it's sleeping, maybe the best option. But it's anybody's guess. Maybe it has something to do with how calm you are, how at rest and comfortable you may be.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, they show up and just surprise the daylights out of people and make loud noises. It could
Mm-hmm.
depend on the species as well.
Well, and it's funny because when you talk about deep underground bases, you have like regular human officers, 6 foot tall, fucking beefcake idiots, and they
Mm-hmm.
get to go deep underground, and they're walking around with entities from a different genetic basis,
Mm-hmm.
which is different than the encounters that we're speaking of, because it seems to be more of a dreamlike quality, huh?
Yeah, no doubt. Uh, the I've had two that stand out really well. One was like a dream, but I woke up almost jumping out of the bed. I believe
Mm-hmm.
thoroughly that I was not in a bed. And when I opened my eyes, it was daylight, and I hadn't moved at all the whole night. Like I was perfectly where I was, almost too perfectly. And I jumped up like so fast. But what's weird about that, and I'm just giving you the end of that experience, but I I've never felt so loved and comfortable in my entire life.
So you felt like you were amongst family.
Yeah,
Okay.
better than family almost. Like it was.
Well, and I don't need you necessarily to walk me through the entire thing, but the first time you felt that loving acceptance, um, was it fresh into the experience, or were you doing shit and then like suddenly? Hmm?
The, the first time when someone's watching the back of your head and you just know and you turn and they're there.
Yeah, yeah.
I was on the phone, uh, and I was talking to at Penny Jet, by the way, and I was out at Jet Penny, and I was outside in front of the apartments I used to live in, and
Mhm.
I felt like I was just drawn to take my ear off the phone and look up to the right. I don't know why. And I looked. Maybe it was because the wind blew in my hair and I wanted to move my hair. I just don't remember. But it looked like there were these 3 doves flying like at 10:30 at night. The moon was high in the sky, and I thought the moonlight was bouncing off these 3 doves in a perfectly triangle formation because there was no sound. And I remember thinking, why don't I see their wings? And I just about ignored it and kind of looked away for a minute. And I realized I needed to pay attention to it. I snapped my head back, and these 3 doves turned into a streak like of dimming light. They were already really dim, like the moonlight was bouncing off of them. But then they kind of streaked away and dimmed out as they did so. Maybe about the streak was maybe about the size of 30, 40 yards. And then that was it. No wind, no sound, no nothing. And I know doves can't do that. So that was
so that was their way of giving you like pay attention to this.
I mean,
or do you think it was? So I've also heard that ETs can play with our perception filters, and perhaps there was an element of that was engineered into us.
it made me feel vulnerable because I didn't know what it was. And her and I got off the phone shortly thereafter, and I stood out there to really get a all senses feel of what just happened. Because
So you were not alone, and there was somebody else with you.
No, I mean, I was in an empty. Well, the parking lot was full, but there was no one out there with me that I know.
Okay.
But I got the impression that I needed to stand there and figure things out. It's the best way to describe it.
Okay.
I like had to know, and I was scared, but I was also like, I had to know. So I didn't know what that meant. There was nothing else to look at, and I finally grew bored with it, and I went back in. And it was some weeks later that I had the next experience.
Can I ask you how old you were at the time that this happened?
I was 45.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah, I was 40. I'm 46 now, so this was really just last year.
Well, and okay, so this is also another thing is a lot of contactees, because I don't like the word abductee. I think there's more of a soul component to that kind of thing. A lot of contactees or experiencers or whatever the fuck you want to call it, only seem to recover their memories like later on in adult life. And whether you want to attribute that to youthful fantastification, or if it's like, is there something that's like released in us later on? Because I had like very fleeting memories of things, and I had to force myself to actually keep a journal and like fresh after I came out of it, because it fogs away, like it buries itself in your unconscious memory. And maybe if you're encountered with strange fantastical beings, your brain wants to protect you from trauma. So, or is it something at the directive of the beings themselves? What do you think?
I think the latter. But of course, there is a component to you burying your own feelings, your own thoughts, if you like a ape who doesn't understand what a gun is.
Sure.
They forget after they play with it and it doesn't go off, and they put it down. Then they know it's a bad. Somehow they know it's bad, but they leave it alone. They forget about it. And the guy's like, "Oh, my dart gun! I forgot. Oops, glad nothing happened." Something like that. I would imagine is a good analogy, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any sense of who they were, Flipped Out?
Well, that particular night, I honestly thought maybe that's the government playing with a new toy, but they're awfully far away. Well, that's not true. In Georgia, there's quite a few bases. But
did you see any agents? I mean, I've had experiences where I've seen uniformed humans, wide awake motherfuckers, and this is different from the people who are entranced and
Wow, no, I'd like to hear about that.
Well,
Well, I mean, I can finish this.
yeah, let's finish the anecdote and then we can branch off.
So yeah, I'll just jump right to the real weird part. And you might have been on something. Maybe this happened much earlier in life, and I just didn't think about it till then. But I feel like I went to sleep that night, and I whatever. Maybe I slept and it was a dream. That's what I mostly want to say. It was just a dream,
That's what it's
you know.
supposed to seem like, right?
And I heavily got that impression. I was shaking when I woke up. I couldn't
That's one of
believe.
the things about the movie The Matrix, right? Like, no, The Matrix wasn't about extraterrestrials, but when they put that thing in his belly and he was like, ugh, and he woke up and he was like, what the fuck was that?
That's
And
how I.
then later on,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like, oh, that wasn't a fucking dream. What the fuck?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't have like anything poking in me and worms and things like that. But like
Right.
when I jumped up, well, let me walk you through it a little bit. So,
Hmm.
as I recall, again, maybe it was a dream. Um, I'm being held in someone's arms, and it's almost as if they weren't holding me, but just my soul. I don't know.
I
Maybe I.
understand what you're saying. That might sound strange to some of our listeners, but um, I think to really understand what we're talking about, you have to divorce the physical from the non-physical. That's the only way this makes sense. And I
We.
think everybody has an understanding of that, just how much they've embraced that. I don't know. That's
You're
up to you.
right. We don't know what's out there. We
Yeah.
have no understanding of what we know. The Earth a little bit. We don't even know 70% of our oceans. We have no idea what's going on down there, and we're supposed to understand what's going on out there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It
And from all accounts, Europa is supposed to have some wild marine life from.
which is totally cool. Yeah. uh,
Anyway,
anyway, I thought I was being like carried like a little baby, and I kept thinking to myself how warm and relaxed I felt. But I remember specifically it was really bright and white, but the floor looked like a black sort of plastic,
mm,
and it was debossed, like much like a metal grate floor we see, and you know, like at a concert or something. But it was black and plastic looking, and very quiet. There was like a low whisper sound, like a TV turned way down. That's just on static.
did you feel alone, or did you know that there were people with you?
There were people everywhere around me, but I couldn't see them, and I was being
Yeah,
carried. And I kept remembering that I was supposed to close my eyes, close my eyes. This repeated in my head, close my eyes.
sure.
And I kept thinking, I'm totally gonna open my eyes right when they don't expect it because I want to see who this is. I was
Hmm.
fighting that urge, and I remember that much of the dream, I guess. And finally, I remember seeing fingers, and they were,
Okay.
and they
Can you
matched.
describe the fingers?
Yeah,
Was it Were they five fingered, like, or four fingered with a thumb?
there
What
were
was it?
three. The thumbs might have been. I couldn't see them, but the three popped up, and they were long and more of a brownish green, and
Okay.
and
And so I'm holding up my index, middle, and ring finger. Is it that same relationship, or is there differences in the length?
much longer. Say two more knuckles length.
Two more knuckles.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
But it was like that didn't bother me. I was like, oh, okay, I'm right. That's cool. Yeah. And then it hit me. I need to see who's holding me. And I jumped out of bed. That's what happened. I was shaking. I was like, but what's really strange is the feeling of love and comfort didn't leave me for like, I felt like I had the best night's sleep ever. Um, yeah, it was really weird. Really weird.
Well, and I want to go out on a limb and look, he could be totally full of shit and pumping my head full of what I want to hear. But based on just the description you're giving me, I want to give you the benefit of the doubt and say that seems like a other level experience. I believe that beings like ourselves. We're very complex. And even through the art and the history of our people, we have discussed things like dream time and physical reality where we're hunting antelope and shit like that. And we've always had wise shamans who are telling us, like, no, we're more than just the flesh you can pinch off your skeleton at the cheekbone, you know? So,
Matter.
what it sounds like to me, and this is just my own interpretation, I encourage the audience to have their own interpretation. And I want to know your interpretation. It sounds like you had a moment of awareness and you looked around and your brain just said, let's continue this at a different time. So it picked a moment when you could relate and then woke you up in your earthly state. And this is what I want to know. Like, have you made any attempts to recover what happened in the interim? Do you have any idea, like, what you might have been carried to do or who you might have met or, you know?
You know, I have wondered if that really did happen, and I wondered for a week or 2 or 3. When I went to sleep, man, yeah, I was freaked out to go to sleep. I literally, I was very, I felt like because the way I slept that night, I had my hand outside of the covers down by my side, and so I refused to sleep with my hands outside of the covers now because of to this very day. Yeah, my right hand specifically. I know that's really weird. My left hand not so much, but my right hand is like assigned to them to get me. Is that weird?
Mm.
It's weird.
No, and that leads me to believe, did you feel like you called them consciously, or do you think like you had some sort of agreement with them before they fucking came and said hi?
Yeah, I think so. That's weird. You would say that. Um,
It's
I would,
things that only people like us know to ask.
and which it's funny because did I burn it into my brain that they exist, and that's what made me had a real messed up dream. And if that's the case, what did I see outside while I was wide awake a few
Yeah.
weeks earlier?
Yeah.
So I'm left with a million questions. I still have trouble sleeping, obviously. Um, and it feels very lonely to say that because, you know, uh, any number of people could just be like, yo, that dude's whack. But I know what I experience. And I really don't care if you believe me or not. But
Hmm.
uh, it feels good to get it out.
Well, that's cool, man. I hope that people realize like things like this are less extraordinary than we're led to believe by popular media. You know, if you believe the ancient texts, we've been visited since our inception or our creation or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Um, whatever race or races, which I believe is the case, contributed to our gene pool, versus who's visiting us now and for what purpose, that remains yet to be seen. But the fact that we are being visited, that we are being interacted with, is undeniable.
It is
You know, and yeah, and I only have 4 people watching me, so I don't give a shit. But that's just my opinion. So I'll talk to you a little bit now, Flipped Out. Thank you for sharing. Um, that was mighty cool. I don't know if you've ever talked with fucking internet about this, but you know, it seems like it was like a exclusive club, and you had to be some fucking weirdo to even. Uh, First time I remember consciously sensing somebody else, I was very young. I was probably like 6. Um, I went outside to let my dog outside, and somebody was standing there. It wasn't human, and I
Mhm.
fucking blacked right out because I was young, couldn't process that. I
Mhm.
remember the face, and it wasn't Zeta Grays, but it was a gray.
They're like machines, right?
I perceive them to be like AI, like organic AI. I've
Hmm.
had some very strange incidents with them, but it's also one of those things, like, I don't want people to misconstrue this as the Greys are the only fucking people ever who give a shit about humans now. They're
Right.
intensely curious about our planet and about how human beings function, because as a race they've recognized that they've lost some of their functioning, and they have singled out our race as somebody who functions how they think they should.
Hmm.
And I'm not even sure that they're mammalian. I want to say they're more like a, you know, aquatic. I don't know how. I don't think they're like crawfish or nothing, but
Yeah, they
you
look
know,
like it though, sort of.
they're fucking weird. Yeah, yeah. And it's also how they operate and their societal structure that makes them seem so alien to us.
They're like a
Um,
cast.
yeah. So I had a very strange and I want to say this is the regressive form. Okay, you and I have talked off air about beings who resemble what we're talking about, but whose orientation isn't necessarily malevolent to our form of life. Um, but I like a hybrid being. Okay, so big bulbous head, big black eyes, but he had ridges on his forehead, dark gray. There was some sort of redness to his eyes, but it was still black. And maybe that's just a perception. And I remember him getting in my face. He was shorter than me, but he was trying to like alpha. Like he was trying to press his alphaness. And I fucking bucked the fuck up and I was like, no, you shut the fuck down. And like that's like one of the first times that I realized how these beings determine their pecking order. It was almost like dealing with a dog. Is that weird? Flipped
No.
out?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know how to act. You don't know how to react either.
Well, I just go off my feeling. Um, yeah. So and that was like a again like everybody wants to assume Greys are the only race interacting with people. Um,
Yeah, there's the Solipsi Rye. Um,
who's that, man?
the Solipsi Rye are part of the Council of Five, apparently. I
Yeah.
can't remember all their names, but Solipsi Rye and the Greys look very similar. But
Okay.
the, I mean, from what I understand, I mean, just from research, I don't physically know what I saw except the hands. So I think that was a giveaway, but I never saw a face. That's what I was jumping for. Ant
Now
people.
I want to ask you, Tommy. Is this the what the Anasazi talk about? And you can answer in the comments. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Flip.
I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah.
Ant people. Some people say that of the Greys, there are these mantis-like creatures, and others have said they're like ants too. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I lost the question. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. The feeling that I got was and we have to go back to the spirit. Jeez. We got about 15, 20 minutes. Okay. We have to go back to the spirit because I believe that humans, Terran humans, because there's also extraterrestrial humans.
I believe that.
Yeah. No, I've seen them. They're yeah. Um
Well, I'm
they
curious.
have a go ahead.
Um, well, can you give can you give an example of one of these meetings where you saw them like you definitely know what you saw and you stayed sort of awake maybe?
Uh okay.
Because I haven't stayed awake, obviously. So it really.
Okay. So I want to couple this with a story that is possibly familiar to our listeners if they're into ufology and contact stories. Um, I've been bred with Flip.
Oh my lord. Well,
Yeah,
you're sure of that?
you asked for an awake story. I'm about to tell you one.
Oh, I'm
Um,
clear.
and
Yes.
this is what's weird because I got so many impressions from this encounter. Number one, I got the impression of the type of craft that this race traveled through. And this is not the Greys, okay? This isn't this is hmm, I called them insectoid, but it's not because they had like bug mouth parts. It's because their joints, like their elbows and their shoulders and their wrists, had definite segments.
And
Um,
exoskeleton-ish?
yes, exoskeletonish. Now they still had like the giant head and the big eyes, and this is what's funny because okay, I've been bred with a couple times. I'm not gonna lie, but every time that it's happened, they've gone out of their way to make the appearance of human hair. And I think that that's their way of making me feel comfortable because human hair is a very mammalian attribute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I got the impression that I was traveling on a craft that was alive, or at least linked to the people traveling on it. The walls were permeable, so you can kind of press into them. But I was led down a hallway, and it wasn't like you're saying where you were carried upon hands or someone's back or whatever. It was like, no, the thing you need is down here. And why don't you go? And aren't you curious about what the fuck is down here? And I got the fuck down there and I found a female. And it's not like I can't say like she was cute or attractive in a human sense. Like her proportions. Did you hear that? That was you.
Oh, my phone.
Hang on a sec. Hang on.
Yeah.
Stand by. Okay, sorry. I gotta be a little more quiet according to the people in my house.
No worries.
So I'm gonna have to fucking whisper. But basically, I was led to an area and there was a female there and she presented herself. And at first I was just like, okay, you're here. What's up? I knew what I was expected to do, but then instantly my head was filled with a compulsion, a male compulsion, if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
So I took her.
You
and
think? Sorry.
yeah, that's where the story dots.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're okay.
You think it was a hybrid?
I think okay. I think it was one of them who was changed a little bit to be more compatible with us, but the goal in mind was to have a genetic person created of our union and used for whatever the fuck they were trying to do. Which
Wow.
also it depends on how you look at it. I think the Terran human race, humans like regular motherfuckers, we're a we're a pool of many races, and we're compatible with many races. And if somebody is missing something or wants to add to their this and that, then they can come down ostensibly. I'm not saying like that's what they should do or what they're entitled to do. It's just what they do.
Well, you
Come
see,
and dip their stick.
pretty much. Well, see, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Because I've questioned why I had that experience. Like I have every now and again for the last year. I mean, I've usually at night when I'm completely alone and or trying to go to sleep. I'm the only one trying to go to sleep, because everyone's asleep in the house. And I'm like, why did that happen? Well, was it, my hand was out, or because I was watching too much of it on TV? What was it? And of course, I've ran into that too. I've been like, well, maybe they wanted me to breed with them or something. But then here's the thing: I fixed that problem a long time ago. So maybe I'm a reject. They were like, yeah, this one's not going to work. Kick him back. So.
Well, and then because their ability to fuck with our memory or our ability to forget what's traumatic to our biology, perhaps you've been interacted with more than you realize. Perhaps all of us have. or
Mhm.
many of us have. One of the big stories that I heard was back in the fucking 50s, um, when they landed at Wright Patterson.
Yeah.
There was a deal struck up where, like, okay, for exchange of our technology, which included fiber optics and integrated circuitry and all this other shit, lasers, we have the right to um, interact with a certain percentage of your populace, and they won't be harmed and they won't remember shit. But there it is, and it's like, yeah, let's snatch that up. And so how many of us have been interacted with who don't remember? What if you've had an experience and can't quite place it?
The best case for your argument there is that not long after we did suddenly go into a huge technology boom. I mean, we weren't what, uh, 20 years out of horse and buggies, 20, 30
Yeah,
years maybe. I mean,
yeah.
we had a combustion engine, not freaking lasers and jet engines and thrusters to get our shit into space, man.
To stealth
And why?
technology. Yeah. I need
Yeah.
you to talk for about 3 minutes. I'll be right back, buddy.
Okay. Uh, I don't know what you guys want to hear about. Um, well, regardless of his particular incident, uh, mine was pretty much allocated to just those two. Although I had different situations as a kid where I was scared for no reason, but I think most of us go through like lonely kid situations, like you don't want to be alone or something like that. But nothing that really stood out until then, which is strange to be an adult this age and you know be scared to go to sleep. That's kind of odd. I haven't been. It hasn't been easy to sleep for well over a year. So, but as far as that goes, I haven't had any situations where I basically could say anything definitive. But it definitely boggles the mind, and maybe it was something to do with watching too much of it on TV. I became obsessed with this real phenomenon. Like, is it real? Is it just something someone's making up? At some point, I feel like everyone goes and does some research. They're like, all right, well, let's check this out. And I started watching channels like real or fake TV. And then ultimately, just found these darn UFO channels watching these fake UFO, pictures and videos. And you know how that goes. You get bored with that. And then you're like, okay, I need to know something real. And it leads to history and pyramids. So did I put it all in my head? I don't know. But it was like no dream I've ever had. And that is certain.
Mhm.
That is certain. Anyway, I was elaborating.
No, that's cool. I appreciate that. And the thing that bothers me about those shows that you were talking about is they always find like the weird motherfucker who's drinking moonshine, who has his hair all crazy directions, and they're like, yeah, yeah, I saw them aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were on my porch,
It's always that
and
guy.
and those depictions, yes, credit the experience. And I feel like there needs to be more level-headed voices. That's why I invited you here. I've had a lot of experiences. It sounds like you have too, and I don't know of many other people who could draw this kind of thing out. But I feel it's important to talk about. You know, where I mean, geez, like if we want to embrace galactic society, we have to start from our own experience, right? And if we don't even know who the fuck we are, what happens if like the V scenario where somebody lands and tries to tell us who we are? Are we going to just be like wide-eyed innocent fodder, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the tricky thing. See, there are there. If I find it, I'll send you the link to this. It's a message to humans. That's what it's called. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called. And
Hmm.
it's this 30-minute uh, sort of message that it'll. Man, we have some amazing writers out there,
Mhm.
or it's true. But when you listen to this calm female voice talk to you for 30 minutes, and they say, "Well, we cannot take action," and they have good reasons why. But if you ask, we can hear you, and it's and it'll trip you out. I really want you to hear this and get your opinion on it.
Mhm.
So either that was just well written. The guy who posted it said that he was told to post it um, through like a daydream or something, and he kept writing as they would tell him what to say and how to present it. It's really weird.
Well, so let me ask you about this too. There's a substance called ayahuasca, right?
Hmm.
And this is something that is mostly prevalent in South America. And you have to have their equivalent of a shaman guide you through an experience. But it's a psycho fuck. It's like a trip you out drug. It's like mescaline,
Yeah,
right?
I've watched it. It's
Yeah. So, but you have to be babysat while you do it because most people report encounters with other than human intelligence. So um, it makes me feel like we were made with a built-in perception barrier, and that
I
there are
agree.
things that we're just not supposed to pay attention to because that was not our purpose.
Well, I think yours and mine is broken because I keep looking. I want more knowledge. It's so funny in the Indiana Jones movie Kingdom of Crystal Skull where she's like,
Ah,
"I want to know more knowledge," and I'm thinking that's how I feel.
and it
And then,
melts our fucking brain.
yeah,
Yeah.
most people are like, "Yeah, man, why you want to check that out, man? I don't care about all that." And I'm thinking, you don't want to know. How do you not want to know? But it's just interesting that you said that because knowledge is everything. Knowledge is everything.
Hmm.
It is. Yeah, if you're, I don't know, 15 years old and a 8-year-old wants to grab something from you and you know it's coming, it's because you have the experience and the knowledge to snatch it away before they grab it.
Well, yeah, it's like the first time I had an out of body experience. I was scared shitless. The first time I saw somebody who was not born on planet Earth, I was scared shitless. And it's like, how do you train yourself from going from Cocoa Krispies and the Jetsons to what the fuck actually is, or what you're encountering at least.
It blows my mind that you had that experience. Do you remember what age you were?
Geez, this is probably 1989, so I was probably 8 years old.
They wanted you
Yeah.
to do that when you were 8?
No, 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 not breed. Okay, so you're talking about the breeding experience. I was into my 20s, man.
Oh, okay.
Um, no, and I think the way that the patterns that I've seen from other experiencers is that you get like an inkling of like, hey, little kid, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
come play outside or come do this or come do that.
Candy in my truck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Creepy.
Breeding, yeah, that wasn't until later. Way after I was well, your body has to physically mature, but and I want to stress this again, it wasn't like Zeta Reticuli. It wasn't like the bug-eyed guys that everybody wants to assume.
Hmm.
I've seen many races, and I think that it's more like a soul signature thing. So, yeah, there's genetics that they keep track of, but I think they keep track of it through where your spirit jumps into. So,
That's interesting.
uh, yeah, and it's like a big, huge, long line, and maybe we can make this like a semi regular series where we talk about stuff like this because I can't think of many other people that I can talk to or attempt to explain stuff about the subject matter to. But I think people are hungry for it. Yeah.
Well, I'm very interested in that. But we haven't even scratched the surface, honestly, tonight, as far as I'm concerned.
I know. Well, okay. maybe let's ask two big questions. I'll ask one and you ask one.
Okay.
The thing that I'm most interested to hear from you is, do you feel like you called them to you, or do you feel like you were chosen or selected?
I think somehow I called them to me because I like when I started doing my research. I mean, I was sort of into it in different phases of my life, but really about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I really
Mhm.
started getting into it. Like, I wanted to know, I needed to know just for once, I need an honest answer because half the people I talked to or watched on TV or read about were saying it's fake. The other half were saying, nope, it's real. Then you've got our government saying, well, sorry, it's real. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I have to know. And so I turned over every rock, opened every web page that I could, and I think that it showed. Maybe there's a red light, like beep beep beep. This dude right here, he's learning too much. Um, on the other hand, it's not like the experience turned off my desire to to know. I will say it scared the shit out of me enough where I stopped for a good few months. I will say that I did stop for a while. I felt
Huh.
like that definitely called them to me, like. Because how many of us do that? Like, really, you just wake up, you go through your day. When you get off, you want to do all the research you can on this sort of thing. And not many people, I mean, people out there nonetheless do it. But, I don't know. I didn't want them to come get me again. And I know that for sure. And I was in a scary predicament. Like I said, I felt perfectly loved and embraced and warm and comfortable. But,
Well, and it's this push pull thing because I'll tell you what flipped out. I've had I've had like moments during the day where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking do this. I'm gonna fucking do this. I'm gonna jump in my car, drive out to the woods, and be like, hey, you guys, here I am. But like, I'm shitting my pants in the car, like on the way to the woods. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to the gas station instead. Go back home.
yeah, you've had some straight up, like, I'm not sure how to elaborate on that. That must have been super traumatic.
Well, and here's the thing: is like I've as not as often, like more often than not, I've been in the presence of like highly evolved, spiritual, galactic citizens, and every now and then I'm in the presence of assholes,
Hmm.
much like planet Earth, but like it's different energy, man. That's the only way I can explain it. It's like if you're in the presence. Okay, I'm going to try to explain this for humans who might not have done this before, but like if you're in the presence of a dog and you love the dog and the dog's fine and you know the limits of dogness, and then suddenly you're in the presence of a turtle and a turtle has turtleness, and and it's the same thing except like compound that with intelligence, and an intelligence beyond
Your own
fossil fuels and yeah, bills and yeah,
big pharma. And,
exactly, that kind of thing. So you know
next week or whenever we can do this, I'd like to explore the AI side of that. There's so many things that I believe coincide with what you were talking about, the ship being alive. And
yeah. Well, that's why I found the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's called Tin Man, where Data and a Betazoid who's like hyper psychic. The only place that he can, not Data, but the hyper psychic can exist on is this ship who's organic at the same time.
mhm,
Um, it's kind of close, but it's also still fictitious. From what I understand, the pilots of the ships are integrated into the ship's intelligence, and they control it with simultaneous thoughts. And if you look at even people like Bob Lazar, he was saying that there was little headbands that fit on people's heads, and you
mhm.
know, yeah,
That makes sense to me. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms I'd really like to open. But
yeah. I mean, so there's a lot of topics we can jump off of. I'd like to thank the chat, Tommy, author Stephen Walton, Snowdub, all the people who have jumped in and chimed in. Rosetta Allen, Felon Reacts, Tommy, you're a constant force. The Rookie Critic, um, all you guys, thank you for joining us. I would like you to suggest topic matter if you enjoy what me and Flipped Out have been talking about. Let us know what you want us to cover. Um, Drop a thumbs up, share the link. Let us know that a show like this exists out in the wild. Flipped Out, go ahead and tell us what you're about, plug your channel. Let us know what you're trying to do on planet Earth.
Okay. Well, my channel is about opinion and comedy, criticizing and praising entertainment. Cover movies, video games, all the same stuff, but every now and then I get a little hammed up and stupid, and I enjoy the idiocracy. So drop some comments, let me know you're there, and subscribe today.
Yeah. Well, shit. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. My name is Immortal Coil. Like, share, subscribe. I upload on my channel mostly weekly on just regular BS kind of entertainment quality videos. I also am part of the Fourth Wave, which does Wednesday and Saturday shows. Author Stephen Walton, you've seen us highlight him. He is one of the hosts of that. Tommy is involved in that as well. Um, you guys come out and check us out. We just kind of dig into entertainment topics and suss it out. Um, and I want to thank each and every one of you. I want to know that you guys are special to us. We couldn't do this without you. And even though there's only 4 people right now with eyeballs on this thing, all 4 of you are very special to all of us. And hell, there's even going to be thousands of eyes on this in the future. I can feel it. Um, Thank you once again. We're going to go ahead and end this broadcast, and we will talk to you